All right, hey everybody, it's Ed O'Keefe, and welcome to the Ed O'Keefe Show. I am super excited for today's special guest, Caleb Marty. Caleb is one of the co-founders of Capitalist Cartel, and I'm blown away by what he's doing in real estate and investments. And he's so young, and he's got a second child on his way. To give you a little background of Caleb, and then we're going to bring him on right away. He started his first business as an auto repair shop at the age of 21. That led him into not only growing that, but also doing real estate, single family homes. And there is a big breakthrough that occurred during his journey when he was burnt out, cash tight. I think you were married at the time still, correct? When you made some of the transitions, but a beautiful wife, wonderful wife and beautiful family. And so I'm super excited to have you on to learn more about your story, but also I think you're just really an inspiration for so many people right now that are looking to build wealth, get out of the time for money trap. And I know we both have a mutual, really good friend and mentor with Mark Evans DM.
Yep.
So I want to talk about him at some point throughout this because that's who we met through. But
Absolutely.
anyhow, man, yeah, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on here. I'm excited to kind of talk about my story and see if I can help some other people.
Well, I think your story actually is going to impact a lot more people than even you think. But why don't we just kick it off? Let's go into like you are the perfect example of an entrepreneur who's grinded his way and has really found his a really nice rhythm and sweet spot and has so much wisdom for being. I never like pointing out age, but you have so many years ahead of you in this journey. So. And I also, one thing just for all my listeners, so that is that, Caleb's working and teaching and showing people his system and methods of growing wealth through real estate and investment. So anyhow, why don't you take us all back? Like, where'd you grow up and how did you kind of follow this trail to becoming, an entrepreneur?
So it kind of goes back to when I was probably 8 years old. I mean, I was working for my dad, who owns like a backhoe and a bulldozer and a dump truck, and we'd install water lines and sewer systems and stuff. And really, my first taste of entrepreneurship was not a good one. It just my dad didn't enjoy the business. The business more or less ran him than him running the business because it was
Yeah.
just such a small operation, and not in a bad way. Just he didn't want employees. He had worked in a factory for a long, long time and just didn't really want
Yeah.
to be around people. So I was mostly his only employee. He'd have some people that would come through every now and then, but I was his main one. And so I started at 8 years old working for him, had that bad taste of entrepreneurship, but he taught me how to work hard, and what it took
Yeah.
to complete projects and do them correctly. And fast forward to whenever I was 18 now, I was graduating. I got a job offer to go work for another construction company because I knew the experience that I had,
Yeah.
running equipment, digging trenches, all that stuff. And so I got a really good job opportunity, but I was still going to school or going to college at that point. And I
Where were
thought I
you,
wanted
where were you going?
Missouri Southern,
Okay. What were you studying? Just out of curiosity.
kinesthesiology and computer programming,
Oh
which
wow,
I
those
was
are kind of two different
I was just winging it. I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do, but my mom wanted me to go to college, so that's what I was doing.
Okay.
um, but in that time, as I was going to college, kept getting a job offer from this guy that I kind of knew who he was. He wanted me to come work for him, and my dad wasn't really on board for it at that time because I was still helping him
Right.
whenever doing college classes and stuff. But it was in that, 08, 09 range. I graduated in 07, 08 and 09. Construction and everything was just dead. I mean, nobody was building. So my dad's business was kind of struggling, which we didn't know
Mm,
at that time. He never was talking about a recession. I didn't even know a recession was going on. I just knew that money was tight, obviously,
yeah.
for a lot of people, including us. And so when he found out I had that job offer and he finally kind of just accepted that it was better for me than maybe staying with him and the size of his company at that time, I went and joined that construction company and spent probably a year and a half working for them. And it was better than working for my dad because my dad and I didn't get along, but it wasn't a bad thing. It just, we were too much alike,
Yeah.
just
Yep. Yep.
somebody else. But I did figure out in that time, I mean, I had already been in construction for 10 or 11 years, roughly at that point, just from being a kid and working, all that time with it. I was burnt out with it at that point. So even though I had a really good job, I could not see myself doing it for another 10 years.
Got it.
So I accepted a job as an auto mechanic with a hot rod shop in town, making $13 an hour. So I went from, I think, $36 an hour doing construction down to $13 an hour because I thought that was like my dream job at that point, is building these hot rods. And
Yeah.
the owner of that business kind of promised me the world that, yeah, you just come in, do, what I need you to do, and I'll bump you up in pay, and tons of promises that just never came to fruition. And eventually I started my own shop there on the side, and ended up losing my job at the auto mechanic business, or at the auto mechanic job, and had to just go full time into my business. So kind of got the ships burnt for me.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, so you decided to start your own. What did you start doing your own auto mechanic like work on your own on the side? Like, so out of like a garage or in the like, or did you actually rent out a place and start opening up your own shop?
So I had just kind of this shed behind my house that didn't
Yeah.
have any heat, but it had a few outlets in it and a couple of lights, where you kind of see, but the doors were kind of broke off of it, so you
Yeah.
couldn't seal it up, and I could just get the front of a car up in it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I started on the side. And I was mostly doing hot rods because I could do the computer programming, so I could get into like the new Corvettes, new Chevy trucks, and change the tuning on them to get more horsepower and fuel economy.
Right.
So that was kind of my passion, because I didn't want to be a computer programmer, but I had that skill set to mix with my passion of cars. And so that's kind of what started or kicked off my business. I just,
Did he figure out you were doing it on the side and he was like, look, bro, you're gone? Or he just, you were.
So my timeline is probably a little off there, because I started doing programming even whenever I was doing construction on the side, because I would build my cars. I'd go to the drag strip, and other guys would have me tune their cars, and I would charge them almost nothing to do it. And somehow this guy invited me to, I say invited, he asked me to come tune a car that they had problems with at their shop, because they didn't have a programmer. They just sent stuff off to a guy in Arkansas to try and program these computers. When they found out I did it there locally, they had me come over, and I went over, fixed the car in probably 30 minutes, and they'd been spending 3 or 4 months trying to get the problems worked out of it. And so he immediately just offered me a job right there. And so it started out, he found me through my kind of side business, and I really wouldn't have even called it a business at that point that I was running. It was just
your hustle.
Yeah, some gas money type stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And so he knew that I had that business before, but we actually had a painter that, the way I got fired was a painter that worked at that same hot rod shop. He was painting cars on the side also. Well, he wanted to go to a SEMA show because one of the cars we built that went to SEMA, both of us were involved in building it. So he wanted to go. I had too much going on. I couldn't have gone anyways, but he told the boss that if you don't let me go to SEMA, I'm going to quit. And so the boss said, well, what are you going to go do? And he said, well, I'm going to go work for Caleb. And I didn't know any of this was going on,
Oh my gosh, hysterical.
We were working on a car, and I got called into his office, and I walked in there, and he's just like, today's your last day. And I laughed.
Oh, is that right?
I thought he was joking. And he's like, no, you can come back and get your toolbox after hours. It's like, okay. And I just left, went home, and I decided it was time to go full time.
Yeah.
What happened, I lost my house loan that I had been working on to purchase a house, because since I lost W-2 income, they pulled the loan on it, and it's kind of a messy time.
Well, fast forward a little bit. So then you obviously started your own shop, correct? And you got up to how many other mechanics were working for you?
We kind of ranged from that 3 to 7. Like we would keep building up, and then I'd have to let a few of them go because they just didn't meet the requirements that we wanted. But we did run 2 to 3 shifts. I mean, I'd have people who would come in after hours, or in that midnight to 4 or 5 a.m. they would work because we didn't have enough open bays to get projects done. And
Yeah.
so we didn't have just a ton of mechanics, but they worked really hard. And I worked, I'm going to say almost all 3 shifts because it never failed. I would go in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and by 3:30, somebody would text me and they had a problem with a project they couldn't get finished. So I'd have to run back out there, help them diagnose it just so they could get that project done so we could finish the next shift of cars when the next shift came in.
Yeah. Wow. And then, so when did you start getting into real estate, and why, I guess, why did you start getting into real estate?
Well, I think I bought my first investment property in 2016, but that kind of came after I was buying up some smaller businesses. Like I had a pizza place, the dry cleaners. What else did we have in that time? A car lot. They were all smaller stuff, like sub 200,000 a year net. They weren't
Yeah.
just massive businesses, but
Okay, let me back up on that then. Where did you get the idea to just start gobbling up businesses? I mean, because that's ahead of your, I mean, that's, first of all, a very advanced thought. Second of all, like, you look on Facebook nowadays and everybody tells you should go buy a business. But so that was, that was almost 8 years ago, bro. Like, you're doing that. That's pretty progressive.
yeah, I mean, looking back now, it kind of was, but I was just too small minded at that point to really know what else was out there. Because buying a
Yeah.
business is a great idea, but I was going about it slightly wrong because I was buying businesses that were too small to ever really
Yeah.
be of great significance. There wasn't huge enterprise value in them. They were just income sources.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that a person could build millions and millions of dollars in net worth. I just thought you had to generate enough income to stack cash,
Right.
to set off to
Right.
the side to ever retire. And really, the reason I even started buying those businesses up was I was so tired and exhausted from running the auto repair business that I just couldn't see myself doing that for another 10 years again, just killing myself to really, it never felt like I was getting ahead because there's always new equipment that we had to buy,
Yeah.
more stuff to finish on the shop. It was just a brutal process. So that's what kind of started getting my mind looking at other businesses. And it's kind
Yeah.
of the shiny object syndrome, to be honest with you. Just every new thing, I was like, oh, I could do that. And I could do real, I could turn this into a extremely profitable business, which I was good at. I mean, I was buying stuff that was losing money and turning it into something that made money.
Yeah.
There was just no scale to it.
Yeah, which actually I think we're going to come full circle on that, because when it almost applies to the same thing with your experience in real estate, right? Like, so it's there's easier wins if you think bigger. So
Yeah.
let's share how you started buying real estate, and then how you grew that portfolio, and then we'll go over some of the myths and misconceptions that finally shifted your thinking to kind of snowball things in a positive way.
You bet. So I bought my first house, and it was actually from a customer of mine at my shop. He was a real estate agent, and I think he knew kind of what I was going through. I was in that burnout stage of the auto business. It's like, why don't you flip houses? He's like, construction, because I used to install or build pads and stuff for him when he would build houses. And he kept trying to convince me to flip a house. I was like, I don't know the first thing about it. And he said, I've got one in Golden City. It just needs power ran to it. It's a brand new house. If you buy it for 80, I think it's worth 120, something like that. I mean, I may be wrong. I can't remember, but it was about a $20,000 gain that I ended up making on that house because somebody came in, made an offer, and I had to do nothing but make a phone call to the power company to have power hooked up. So I spent $0
Yeah.
house. And so it was my first deal. I loved it.
Yeah.
Easiest $20,000 I had ever made, obviously. So it was a pretty easy way to get hooked, but it's still in the back of my head. It wasn't recurring income. Just always felt like we're in this trap of selling. And that's what I was doing in my shop and all my other businesses. It's like, could in 30 days from now, the entire thing just come to a
Yeah.
dead.
You're trading one, you kind of like traded one trap for another trap.
That's what that felt like with that.
Yeah, it's a great observation. Yeah, and I think, and just for the listeners too, is like, if you look at a lot of the people, like when I had Mark Evans on just recently, and then it's like he talks about the mule versus magician. Whereas if you're just thinking about like, how do I work harder, longer, for more income, you're just in another trap. It may be paying you more, but again, you're stuck in this trap where making some kind of shift where you can get rapid, larger, leverageable, ongoing wins is just a totally different question. So, but keep going, man, keep going.
So from that one flip, I was able to take some of that cash. I was, even whenever I was doing that, I was kind of at a point of my business where my business was outgrowing the income side of it.
Yeah,
Like netting, I'm going to say 30 to 35,000 a month in that business, but we were growing so fast that I was having to wrap that 30 or 35,000 up in parts to order for the cars that were setting outside, and it'd take 45 days sometimes to get some of these parts. So all that cash was just tied up as we were growing. We'd finish 10 cars to start working on 20. And it was just like I didn't realize at the time how good the business was doing because we were growing so fast.
yeah.
And so I didn't have just a bunch of excess cash. And so I had to take part of what I made off of that flip to help fund purchasing parts for these next group of cars that we're coming to build. And so it kind of sucked because I took money out of that real estate business to help fund my other business. But I did take, I'm going to say 7 to 10 grand, because I don't know exact numbers anymore, to go start purchasing rentals. So I'd go put that down on a rental property. And then by that point, I'd kind of started leveling off. And so my business didn't need funded, and it was putting off some excess cash flow there where I could really start using it. So I use it to fund the remodels on these because I didn't know any better. I didn't know the BRRRR method existed. My plan was I just wanted to buy 30 houses, pay them all off, and then
get paid on your residuals, right?
Yeah.
Which by the way, like, so you're what you're kind of sharing too is that you went from the cash flow trap of your auto repair shop to now single family homes. Your growth strategy was, but I mean, I think one of the challenges that you mentioned you faced was that every time you tried to get ahead with cash flow, you ended up putting into the next investment property. So you were back, running through this. Will you talk about that a little bit?
You bet. So I think most investors are going to relate with this, that when you're building your real estate portfolio, you're asset rich and cash poor. And that's really where I was in that 1 to 30 unit range. Really 1 to 70 kind of felt that way, but 1 to 30 was really brutal because there was just never excess cash flow. I could never hire somebody else to take the burden off of me. A lot of the maintenance was falling back on me. All of the remodels were on me. So I was trying to run that business during the day to keep my main income alive.
Yeah.
And then all night long trying to get this investment property business off the ground. And I mean, it was, I think any entrepreneur can say when you work a lot of hours, it stresses every part of your life, relationships with, I didn't have friends really. I mean, they were all there. I didn't hang out with any of them, didn't talk to any of them. My wife never got to see me. I came home after she was already asleep and I was already gone before she got up. And I could just tell that I had to figure something else out, because that entire path, even up to 70 units, I was still in that trap because I couldn't self out of it. And I think you and I had talked.
Well, I mean, let me just paint that picture. So think about this. So Caleb had 70 single family home units, right? That you're renting them all out. Yet you still were stuck at a complete ceiling. And I think if I was like at the country club or at a bar or a restaurant, a guy tells me he's got 70 units that he's renting out at capacity or near capacity, wherever it might be, I'd be like, man, this guy's loaded. He's just killing it. And so, but your experience was different than that.
Yeah, because it really was just like you mentioned earlier. It's just all of my profits were funding the next deal. I just couldn't. The deals always got larger or more at a time. Like if we complete 3 houses and pull some cash out of those and take the cash flow off of those, then I'd go buy 5 houses.
Yeah.
Those 5 houses would buy 7 or 8. And it was never coming to me. It was just always going back into projects. And I was growing. Single family homes were just hard to grow because it's hard to manage where they're at. You got at 70 single family homes, I had 70 property taxes, 70 insurance policies, 70 roofs to keep track of. And then by that point, when we were starting to hire the maintenance and management, I mean, my guys were getting lost at liquor stores in between single family homes. There were
Yeah,
so many challenges that came to them. And I mean, cities were sending me bills for grass being too tall because tenants weren't mowing their own grass.
sure.
And it was like you're chasing them all over the place and still
Yeah,
not
the
making things happen.
complexity was, like, and I think this is one of the things that people don't understand is that, um, I've never had 70 single family homes, so I'm not describing that, but like, it's when you add another project on or another opportunity on, they always think, okay, well, I'll just be, 1 times more busy or whatever. It's just incremental. But the fact is you have exponential, the complexity becomes exponential because,
Absolutely.
and so you multiply it by 70 times,
Yeah. And
it's
your
pretty
capacity is
crazy.
different too. Cause I mean, my capacity has grown over the years because I can just um, distinguish what's worth my time of worrying about and what's not now. But early on, in that investment side, it just everything was catastrophic. It felt like, anything that
Yeah.
was coming through, I felt like I had to handle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every email that came in, I had to respond to. And I just kept hitting my capacity. And so I couldn't really even take a step back and look to see what's that next level like? Like, how do I get out of this like mouse trap that you were talking about,
Yeah.
that's kind of holding me here?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why don't we just kind of share that? I know first of all, I think your wife was awesome when we were talking about this because just so our listeners know, like I was asking Caleb, and I think one of the things that when you're an entrepreneur for long enough and you've got enough war wounds and you've got the scars and the battle scars to like kind of, you really do become tougher. You callous a lot of the problems that but when you're going through it, it's just hellish. And you feel like, I still remember the first time I got a letter from an attorney. I literally thought I was going to lose everything I own when
Yep.
I called up my buddy who's an attorney. He's like, "Well, no, here's what's going to happen," and it wasn't as big of a deal. I was terrified though, but
Yep.
but I think the other challenge that we all face is like as we either get like when you're young and single and you have no responsibilities, you could lose everything and it doesn't really matter. But
Yep.
as you start considering, hey, I want to have a family, or now I have 1 kid or 2 kids, or like my wife and I, we have 7, and we have more to lose, it taxes you differently, right?
Yep.
Um, so why don't we shift towards you're getting burnt out, don't have enough hours in the day. This has been going on now for a number of years. And even though you're quote unquote being successful, you're still stuck in a trap. So what was the shift that started opening up, I guess, the skies and, you started seeing daylight and where you started understanding how to simplify this wealth building plan of yours?
It's interesting because it was actually at a mastermind group, and I don't know. Do you know Matt Larson?
Oh yeah, I know Matt. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I know
Matt
Matt.
was actually at this event. He was putting on a lot of or he was one of the speakers and
Yeah,
trainers and stuff there. And he was a wholesaler and flipper and
yeah,
probably the best at it that I've ever seen.
yeah. Matt was doing
Uh,
like 200, 300 flips a
I think
year, wasn't he?
100 and something flips a year. And I mean,
Yeah,
just very organized and structured. And so I was taking a lot of this stuff and structural and management stuff that he was talking about. But it was hard for me to put it into what I was doing because I wanted to be on the long term hold side. I didn't want to do the flips anymore.
yeah.
I already had my businesses, so my quick money was there. I was really just trying to figure out how to get to that residual
Because
income side.
isn't that, Caleb, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, one of the challenges with wholesaling is that you really are beholden to speed of throughput, correct? Like you have to be making sure things are moving. And some people like are getting caught up in this trap right now where they're not able to move a property or they're not able to move something, buy something and get it moved fast enough. So they're not making the money that they were making.
Yeah, and if they're not the very best at it,
Yeah.
with tons of experience, they're getting their teeth
Yeah.
kicked in. Like I'm sure
That's right.
Matt's doing it still because he's got such a great
Huge
system in
machine.
place.
Yep. And
Yeah,
pent up lead flow over a long period of time. So like it's a timing thing, but we're not
yeah,
talking about what Caleb's going to talk about in a moment is not, we're not saying, I love Matt, but we're not saying go study that because it's a very complicated, much more saturated space right now.
yeah.
So Okay,
And
so you're at the mastermind, which both of us are in masterminds.
mm,
You're in Mark Evans DM mastermind. You have your own
oh,
mastermind, which we're going to talk about shortly. And what I found is that, most people that are success minded and that want to actually achieve goals faster have a minimum of, 1 to 3 masterminds that they're in
yeah,
because, as you and I both know, iron sharpens iron. There's a great phrase from Game of Thrones. I was doing a presentation a week ago, and I asked the guy who brought me on. I said, "Hey, Josh, have you ever watched Game of Thrones? Caleb, have you ever watched Game of Thrones?"
I haven't.
Oh my God, you guys got to watch this, right? And Josh says, he goes, Ed, I don't watch TV, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to make this all up. But it was like this great scene where the two sisters, after they fought and like they lost their castle, years went by and they all came together. Anyhow, they said, you remember when Father used to say, um, in winter, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives.
Yeah.
And I always equate that to like entrepreneurship is like men especially tend to isolate themselves when stuff's not going well. And it's probably one of the most destructive patterns that we do. Because usually as entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or people that have been, are winners, you've had to use some brute force individually to get through some hard times, but that's not a really good strategy when everything's blowing up or when there's you're trying to do great things. You need people, you need mentors, you need models. So big fan of that.
Absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I was
I'll
doing
go.
in that first one,
Yeah.
was really trying to get around those people that had already been through the problems that, I was facing at that point. And I had met Matt at that event, and then I met this other guy. I think you and I had talked about it a little bit. He was kind of at the back of the room, didn't talk very much, but I knew he was a guy that I wanted to talk with after the event. And he
Yeah.
was the first one to really just come out and ask me if I was in the multifamily space, doing apartments. And I said I had some, but it was like 6 to 8 units, and it was brutal because the turnover was so high. And I could tell he didn't agree with what I had said. And so it made me ask a few more questions. And he went on to tell me about a project he had bought. Because one of the questions he asked me before I get into that was, have you ever made $1 million on a single family home? I said no.
Wait, say that again. What was the question he asked? Because it broke up for a split second.
He said, have you ever made $1 million on a single family home? So I said no.
Great
Like, it's
question.
not even possible, for what market I'm in. And he's like, well, I haven't either, and I'm in an expensive market. He's like, but I have on my apartments. So of course I wanted him to explain more. And he said his very first apartment deal he purchased for around $8 million, and he sold it for $13 million a year and a half to 2 years later. And so he made $5 million on just owning it, and he didn't spend more than 10 or 12 hours on
Yeah.
the acquisition of it, hiring somebody to oversee it and do the remodel. And he's like, I went to the property twice, sold the thing for $5 million. And like, that was more than my entire asset value combined. And he made it in profit,
Yeah.
just on
And,
one deal.
and I mean, when you look at a lot of the sales, the marketing gurus out there, and I'm not hating on anyone at all, by the way. This is just pure advertising. Is like, hey, buy for 25%, sell for 100% is like the pitch or the hook.
Yeah.
When the reality is, this guy just bought it at, would you say 8 million, and he sold it for 12. So he purchased it at. Oh, what's that, bud?
8 million and 13 million was the.
Yeah, I mean, so he bought it at say 65% or 60%. I might be off of my math a little bit. And
Yeah.
what he made was a massive chunk. And what you found out was that he spent probably just the same amount of time, if maybe a little more, a little less than you did on a single family home. Right?
I was easily spending that,
Yeah.
maybe double, triple that on single family home acquisitions and trying to get them, to the rentable condition.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it just completely opened my eyes to the fact that I was just playing too small of a game to ever really get to that multi-million dollar. They say if you play with thousands, you'll make hundreds. If you play with 10,000s, you'll make thousands, and whatever that terminology is. But I was just playing too small of a game early on,
Yeah.
really big games.
But isn't that one of the reasons why even with when you're purchasing, like why guys buy bigger businesses, is that like if you're buying a bigger deal, you can get bigger you have more money to get other people to do stuff for you. Whereas if you're doing a small single family home, you're so cash strapped on it to squeeze out every penny, you end up doing manual labor to push the profits up, right? So, okay, so you have this conversation with him, and then what did you end up doing? And give us the next few moves that you made.
I want to say that that conversation happened in early 18.
Okay.
If I remember right. And so I came back, and I remember on the plane ride back, my wife and I were talking, and I still wasn't convinced at this point. Like, it opened my eyes, but I still wasn't convinced I was capable of doing it. That took me probably another 6 months to really convince myself that I could do this, because there wasn't really any masterminds around multifamily at that time. I mean, there may have been, I just didn't know about them, but I knew I wanted to be involved in it. And so I started just diving in, trying to figure out, what does financing look like? Where am I going to get them for it? And since I was doing single family homes wrong, in my opinion, looking back now, I had all this trapped equity in them. I wasn't pulling all my cash out of every deal. I was sitting on a few $100,000 at least of equity that I could easily get my hands on. And then I took out a loan against my business. And so I took the money from those houses and loan against my business and went and contracted 2 48-unit apartment complexes. And the financing ended up being easier than what I thought it would be.
Wow.
I had to talk to quite a few banks, to get it done. But the assets that I was buying produced enough income where it really didn't even matter so much on my financials, because the financials of the assets I was buying was so strong. And I ended up didn't even need all the cash that I pulled out of those other deals to close them. Like, they gave me phenomenal terms to buy them. And so I immediately went from that 70 unit range to 170 units, all in the month of October 2018. I bought 2 48-unit apartment complexes. And from there, it was just like the floodgates opened. I could finally see like how to really get into that hundreds and thousands of units quickly and with very little effort. I think it took me just as much work to finance those apartment buildings as one single family home.
Yeah. Do you so that's crazy. So, in my book, Time Collapsing, which I wrote like 7 and 9 years ago, there was a book. What changed my life was a book by Robert Ringer, which was written in the 70s. It's called Winning Through Intimidation. They rebranded it like Intimidation to Be or Not to Be. It's kind of stupid rebrand, but everyone gets offended nowadays. So Winning Through Intimidation probably terrifies half the country. But but he talks about this idea of like when he was his whole point was that in any negotiation or any like engagement, whoever is the most intimidated person, just even if it's knowledge intimidation or their status intimidation, like he wasn't saying like you're being a jerk, like that kind of intimidation, will always lose in a negotiation. But here's what I'm sharing all that. He talks about a concept called the leapfrog theory, which the leapfrog theory says that no one has, no one's going to come along and give you permission to be able to go buy 170 units. The gentleman that you met who was already successful, which I know Mark always says this too, is like, you'll never get somebody who's ahead of you kicking down on you. It's usually people that are below you that are trying to drag you back down. But his leapfrog theory was at any given point, you can decide and proclaim to leap right to the top because all the competition is going up the stairways. That's where all the competition is. But if you just decide mentally, like, look, I'm going to go to the top, and then there's less competition. There's more people that are willing to help you. Now you have to figure out the specialized skill sets, but we're smart. We can learn that. So it sounds like in one fell swoop, you by doing that, you applied the leapfrog theory, you also had the paradigm shifts of like becoming a magician in some ways, right? So do you mind sharing a little bit about your mindset shift? Like what was the big mental shift that occurred that opened the floodgates?
I really think it was just trying to imagine, I really wanted a business that I could build up to the size where I had managers, um, maintenance managers, office managers, operations manager, stuff to start taking me out of it. So I got to just enjoy the business, not, be run by the business so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started drawing out like how many units it would take to put some of those positions in place. And
Wow.
once I started drawing that and putting it on paper, then I started kind of developing stuff like one of my hashtags I always used on Facebook was 1,000 units or bust, and it was always a joke because everybody in my market thought I'm going to go bankrupt in a couple years. There's no way you go from 0 to 1,000 units in a short amount of time and not, implode. And so I kind of use it just as a joke because people knew what, I was talking about because they knew the rumors and stuff. And so I kept hammering that 1,000 units or bust in every post. But
Love
what
it.
I was, and it was, I was conditioning myself, my bankers, people in the company, all that stuff to know where we were heading.
Love it.
Used to seeing that 1,000 unit mark because originally, whenever I first started getting some of that financing, a lot of the banks that I was dealing with were like, okay, well, you got a couple of 48 units. Let's see how those do for a while. And my thought was, I've already got them. They're stabilized. They're in our software. They're not going anywhere. I'm ready for the next deal. And so I had to train a lot of the bankers through this entire process that they just didn't believe I was going to do it. And it was hard to sit down, with nobody else in my marketplace doing that same thing and convince them that I was going to do it when nobody else really had. There's people that own more units, but it had been a 20, 30, 50-year process, from family to somebody else, or they've just built it themselves over a long period of time. So I can understand why they didn't believe it, but I'd already wrote it down. I did the math on how to make it happen. Once I wrote it down, I could see it. It was just the work to accomplish it, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just a long, brutal process of getting through to a lot of those banks to get them on the same page as me to where they would allow me to grow and hit lending limits and refer me to other banks. And sometime in that period, once I got enough of those deals done, it was almost numbing. You didn't get the excitement of closing a deal anymore. It was strictly business. And that really allowed it where I could go into any negotiation. And if I got the deal, great. If I didn't, it wasn't any big deal to us. We had that operation already moving. And I think that made it just more potent, when you don't have that emotional tie to it.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think last week when we were talking, I think you had 3 closings just last week where some people are, thrilled with one a month, if they're big ones too. So I want to get to what you're doing now and like how it's evolved to now. So and also how I know you're working and mentoring some guys now but I want to ask you before we get to that, do you mind sharing like 3 of the biggest lessons or something that you'd like to share with the audience as far as like if you're considering doing where would you recommend they should be investing their time, energy, and effort? And what is kind of your big pillars you teach your guys that you're working with?
So I'm going to say the number one thing is probably deal structure and just creative finance.
Okay.
They sound like almost dirty words when you talk about them, but that's how some of the best deals are made. It's like, how do you pair financing packages together to give you the highest return on investment, because it's velocity of money in this game that really puts you ahead. It's if it takes you a year to turn $100,000 or you can turn $100,000 every month, by the end of that year, that compound of that 100,000 a month is going to be more than the 1.2 million in actual total you get, right? Like it's compounding. So you're going to get gains off of that 100,000 that'll turn to 110, 120, 130. And so I really was focusing most of my business after this first 2 acquisitions on how to get creative finance how to leverage deals that I already had, how to make offers that were appealing to the seller,
Yeah.
but also great for me, with low interest financing. I've got zero. I don't anymore on all of them. I've been paying these off because the loans have termed out, but I had sellers giving me 0% interest on probably close to $1.5 million. And so I
Wow.
imagine in today's money, like that's saving me 120 grand a year just in interest on
Wow.
those.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so that's where I really spent a lot of my time dialing in on like some creative offers, like a 4 offer method. And so I would say just that package of stuff would be number one, like how to get those creative offers out, how to structure them.
Yeah, and Caleb, you are a really like soft spoken, pretty down earth guy. Like you're not a Pace Morby, style, which I think when guys think of like creative financing and negotiating, you get an energy like Pace, which by the way, I'm not criticizing Pace at all. He's got some great content. So that's not at all. What I'm going a little bit differently on that is you're proving you can have your ability to do really good quality deal structure, negotiate, and you could be yourself at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so what's number two? I'm gonna turn off my light real quick because my camera's heating up. So what would number two be for you, bud?
I would say operations and self managing. And I'm not necessarily talking about just managing the assets yourself, but more with setting up a management company. So you're not hiring out third party, because a lot
Yep.
of times people think third party is going to do better than them, or they're going to have more experience, which they should have. But is what you run into is you've got two people trying to make money off of the same asset, and the only way for that property management company to make more money is for them to charge you more. And
Yeah.
so if they're trying to grow their business and I'm trying to grow mine, we're kind of fighting against each other. It's just
Correct.
not aligned like they sell it to you to be. And most of the time, they're not efficient managers. I've yet to see one that could effectively manage a property anywhere near what even decent operating self-managed property can do. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, totally. Love it. Love it.
And so a lot of the people that I get calls from that are distressed because of a property management company. And so I get great deals by them running these properties into the ground, and we come in, fix them, and bring them back to 100% occupancy, and restore the um, remodel the properties, get the maintenance caught up, get retention rate up, and now then we've got an asset that is sometimes worth 2 times what we paid for it.
Right.
You know,
And it's your own property management company, correct? That you've set up.
yep,
So something I know this is a little more advanced strategy, which I know when people in the beginning, but like you've set up you try to vertically integrate all your expenses so that it's all under your own corporations, correct?
yeah, and so we can really control price point on stuff. Our repairs, we know exactly what it's going to cost us to
Yeah.
go replace a sewer line or a water line or a roof, siding, windows, whatever it may be. I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about a bad contractor coming in and rug pulling us or taking our money and not finishing a project or doing it incorrectly. If we do it incorrectly, I can fix it. I send my guys back in there, and if I'm the only loser, there's no, not two of us losing, but
Yeah.
it really doesn't happen. And even when the mistakes do happen, it's still a fraction of what you would have spent on the whole project. So you still come in way under budget on
Yeah.
rehabs and maintenance that way. And I think that's really what in the real estate business builds a sound and safe portfolio. Because anytime you've got it in the hands of somebody else, they've got employee turnover, an owner may
Yep.
die. There's just so much that we saw over the years that just rocked the boat, or they outgrow what they're really capable of. And so even if they did okay before, but they grow, and then all of a sudden they're trying to reel in all of these issues, their biggest clients are the only ones that's going to get the attention. It's not going to be the little guy that has a 10 to 20 unit portfolio with them.
Yeah.
Those guys are crushed. So I think for safety wise, you have to manage your own properties.
Okay, so last question, I want to segue. a little bit about the Capitalist Cartel and Capitalist Cartel Platinum, what you guys are doing. How important has it been? Because this kind of leads into that a little bit, but how important has it been for you to find partners both on the funding side, raising capital side, and even finding and to bring deals to you?
Can you say that again? Part of it.
Yeah, like with relationship capital and the importance of building your network. Now that it seems like you're getting more deals coming to you. You have a great ability to raise money. Obviously that doesn't happen by staying behind a computer and being by yourself. So, can you talk a little bit about like how you like where the focus has been if you're giving advice to others on the different relationships that you want to build in your network and time, effort, energy towards that?
Yeah, I'm really
That makes
looking to
sense.
put more effort into those relationships that I can partner with or help them fund their deals, help sign their debt, like more strategic partnerships, I guess. And I
Yeah.
find a lot of in those groups. Like I'm in Mark's group, which I know we'll talk about later. I'm in his group for Mark, but another huge value that I get out of that group is networking with all these guys that are doing similar types of things. And they all have their own way of doing that. So it's easy to brainstorm, bounce ideas off of each other, or try something that they're trying to see how it compares to what I'm doing
Yeah,
to see if I
totally.
can catch up. And um, it's actually how I met my partners in the Capitalist Cartel was through mastermind groups. You know, we went and
Oh, okay.
I met them and I was like, well, these guys are on the same wavelength. You know, we just operated different than everybody in that mastermind group, but we operated very close to the same. And so we really just, I mean, multiple days a week, we're on phone calls and sharing what we were doing and how it was working. And here's the stats on this, you know, how we're structuring the leasing side. This is what we're doing. This is the numbers we're getting every month on leads. And then I'd show them what we're doing. And then we'd usually kind of combine both of them to do one perfect process,
Yeah.
take them back to our businesses. And it just, I think that was probably one of the biggest portions of allowing us to scale because nobody wants to go buy 1,000 units if you can't operate them. Like
Yeah.
that's a death trap, you know,
Yeah.
just to an early grave. But by bouncing those ideas back and forth off of them and being able to pull their systems in and then able to use mine, we really just had that very well-rounded model and system that now looks very much alike. I mean, if you looked at their business and my business, it would probably be some color changes, and that's about it. You know, very
Yeah.
simple. And it's interesting because we saw every time we'd make a change, we would see the same percentage changes. You know, in their
Yeah.
organization, it's like Jeremy just messaged me last night on their occupancy level, and we're within 1% of the same occupancy level and the same collections on that occupancy.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy how close they are because you just don't see that across other businesses and at the same level that we're at. You know, it's just so cool to see how really dialing in is duplicatable. You know, and seeing
Yeah.
other guys in the group using the same systems and models to build their businesses off of and spitting out similar percentages that we are.
Yeah. Well, why don't you back up a step and just tell us a little bit about how you got into teaching with Capitalist Cartel and then share a little bit about what you're doing now. Like if people want to work with you one-on-one or one in a smaller, more intimate group, where you're actually funding deals, helping raise money, we'll review deals for guys. You've created Capitalist Cartel Platinum, which I think is pretty amazing. Do you mind just kind of sharing us the journey of like you working with people and why, like who would be the right fit for your mentoring program and coaching club?
So really like the platinum group is for those people that are wanting to go from 30 to 50 unit range, maybe 30 to 70 units. They're stuck in kind of that
Yeah.
trap that we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier, that really want to increase their holdings, their total asset value, their total units, whatever it may be, because everybody measures it different, right? But really wanting to get out of that mousetrap
Yeah.
and really into more of um, a real operator and real business owner in the real estate space where they can be maybe a little more time freedom,
Yep.
definitely more income off of it, by the way we structure stuff. And guys that are wanting to just start now on building that portfolio, but maybe need help on the funding, help on the financing, help on deal reviews, maybe even partners. There's guys in our base level capitalist cartel group that I've done some partnerships with, and they've worked out really well because like Mike is one of them in our group that he came in, maybe did some flips. I can't remember where he was at, but he brought a 24 unit property to me to underwrite. And he was pretty well ready to walk away from the deal because he didn't think it was a good deal. And I just kept pushing him like, what's market rent? Go find market rent. Are you sure that's market rent? Because here's what I'm getting on those same units, and you're $100 a door cheaper than that. And we ended up finding that we could just change the way the numbers were underwritten by what the listing agent had put out. And it changed the value of this asset by about $700,000.
No
And
kidding.
So, yep.
So he was about to watch. I mean, this is like it's a simple story, but it's actually a life-changing generational wealth opportunity, because he was about to walk away from this, and he may have been walking away from it from a couple of reasons. One is just lack of specialized knowledge that you had. Okay, so that's just fair. Yeah, like, I mean, he just might have just been not seeing it properly. But frankly, what he may not be sharing, and maybe this isn't even about him, but like this is happening with all of us, right? Is just like the confidence to press into that even more and find another way to make the deal work. And probably would have never done it if it didn't have nudging or borrowing your belief system and borrowing your experiential wisdom to help him push that deal across the edge. And again, just like earlier when you did the leapfrog experience of going from 70 units to 180 units in 1 month, that's a life-changing, generational changing experience for him and his entire family,
It really is. Because I mean, now then, since he's closed that one deal, it's just like his eyes are open now. Like now he can see it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
None of it's hard. The scariest part was just signing the contract, to get the deal under his control. And from there, it was all easy. I mean, I took him and introduced him to my bankers, and he ended up going with his own insurance guy because he had a relationship with him, and put him in touch with our attorneys for evictions if he needs it. Just a lot of stuff in place to make him successful. And I think within 3 months, he was at 100% occupancy and had raised rental rates because a lot of them were in month to month. I want to say it was $5,000 or $6,000 a month that he raised the income on that property on just a 24. Right? And so now then he's like, man, if that was a 100-unit deal, I might be ahead, $15,000 a month or $20,000 a month in rent. And so I mean, it definitely leapfrogged him now as well, and he's started a couple of businesses, and he's only been in the group a couple of years. He didn't really have any experience before that. So we're really trying to, like you say, time collapse. Instead of him taking the 8 years that I put into figuring it out, let's just skip right till the end, and I give you the tools to put in place to be just as profitable as we are on.
Yeah. And the other thing, just so for the listeners, if you've been following Caleb for a while, the opportunity in with Platinum is he's getting so many deals thrown by him for people to review that, frankly, it's your opportunity to be in a smaller group where you have more direct access. Because there's only so many hours in the day that it's Caleb's way of, I would imagine this is one of the rationales too, Caleb, is like, who are my real players out there that are serious about investing in themselves? And by investing in themselves, you have Caleb investing in you, both with his experiential wisdom and then possibly with funding. I know you said you've set aside, or you're setting aside, $500,000 as well in to fund deals, and if it's the right deal. Can you share that a little bit, just a little bit about what you're looking for?
Yeah, so I'm really looking for guys that are coming in to do those multifamily deals, whether they're in my market or in other markets, that are struggling maybe for the down payment, or that's what's holding them up from doing more deals, is they don't think the funding is there. My initial goal is to help them structure a deal where they don't need my capital to get the deal done. And that's where that creative structure comes in, or raise capital. Maybe if they've got a debt issue, I can. Um, I'm setting up some stuff with my bankers for more of a white glove experience where I can push them to the front of the line because they're in my group.
Yeah.
And we're going to streamline their finances where it's already set up for the banker to take them to committee, get the deals reviewed, and get an answer back right away that is like, this person needs to change this or this in their finances, which hopefully, if they allow me to help them with that, we can get them prepared for that before they go to the bank. But I want to have all that stuff in place so that they can hopefully do the deal 100% on their own. But if they can't, me or another member can step in with helping them get whatever little piece that is that's missing.
Yeah.
Sense.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and there's the sea rises, all ships rise together. I love it. I love
Absolutely.
it.
I mean, I've never done it lost money on. So.
What's that?
Never done a deal with partners in real estate that we've lost money on. I'm not going to close the deal if it's a bad deal. I'm not going to put money into a deal if it's a bad deal. And so
but so that right there actually is a super valuable comment because, or observation, is like, if you have a deal that you're looking to pull a trigger on and you're just getting like, if Caleb's not going to sign off on it, not saying that that's the end all be all, but if you're looking to borrow his experience and wisdom, that's great confirmation that you don't want to go through with the deal. Like if you're like kind of teeter-tottering and you want a third party perspective, you can ask people's opinions all day long, but if you're in a group with people committed to your success, it's a different experience, No,
it really is. I mean, and there's so many guys that have the ability to close and contract deals, but they just get scared. And, I talk to them a week later and they're like, I didn't contract it, because I got cold feet. And another member of our group that was unrelated went and closed it, and they're posting the returns they got off of it.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see, the ones that do get hung up on it, and then the ones that do just go ahead and close it. And most of them that go ahead and close them are the ones that actually reach out to us and do what we say.
Yeah.
There's ways when you contract a deal, there's ways to exit a contract and it not hurt you or the seller, really. It's things in the contract put in place to protect both of you. And so wrapping them up and controlling them, if you think it's a good deal, is always the first goal. And a lot of times that's what people struggle the most with. And that's where a lot of my value comes in. I can quickly come in and say, I would contract this deal, and then start that due diligence process after I have that asset under my control, where nobody else can buy it.
I love it. So with how often are you getting on a call with the members, and are you doing any live meetups? Like how's the interaction going to work with Platinum?
We're going to do at least 6 live meetups a year that are really like full days, and probably dinner afterwards, because I want to dive into each person's business, because each person's business is different, in some way. And so I want to be able to say, what is that one obstacle that's holding you up, that if we can fix it, correct it, or connect you with somebody that will take you to the next level, where now then you got a whole new set of problems you have to deal with. And I think in order to keep them on the path to success, doing quarterly meetups, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, that's the way our other group is. We just do quarterly meetups. It's a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
But the time in between those meetups, you see people, they really take off strong.
Yeah.
And then they falling off. And usually they're 30 or 45 days in whenever they start rolling over and everything's starting to come back down off of that last meetup. Because, I mean, if you've been in mastermind groups, you kind of know that excitement leaving the group, like, man, I took this way, and this way. I got to go back and implement them all right now. And you've got 10 things on your list, and you maybe get one of them implemented. It's that event. You take a whole new set of ways.
Yeah. I love that you're doing 6 meetups a year, the 1 days, because I think you're totally right. Especially to, what I love about that is like one of the challenges where if you only have limited time to meet up with a group, life gets in the way. You might just not be able to make one of them. So if you're able to, like, if there's 5 other on the calendar, plus the weekly meetups and plus the group, I mean, you're really having opportunities to stay fresh, stay edge. And, everyone gets punched in the face, man. Like, it doesn't, if you're planning on being in business and investing and you're out hustling, I mean, the hustlers are the ones that are causing the stir and getting things done, which means you're taking a lot of the bullets, you're taking a lot of the arrows in the back, and you're working hard. And you've done so much of that, and they get to ride on your belief on that and follow your model. But it just is important, I think, especially when so much of us work virtually, to be in the same environments, even if it's virtual, but also in person. There's power and magic to that, the tribe. So
absolutely. Yeah. I will take as much away from that group as everybody else will.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody's going to have a perspective on something that is going to give me information to reflect on and implement, in the way we conduct business too. So
yeah,
I almost feel like it's almost an unfair system. I think I actually walk away in the end with more than what the members of my group do.
Not good. Fine. Have to edit that part.
I think I lost you. Can't hear you anymore.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I got you.
Just dropped my. I'll have to edit that part out, but that's all right. All right, cool, man. This has been outstanding. So a couple of things. One is, so how would people get a hold of you? And just give me a couple of the qualifiers, like who should reach out to you, and possibly who's not ready yet that might just be better off hanging out in the Capitalist Cartel. Either way, they could reach out to you because you could help guide them in the right direction. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that first level group is really kind of good for anybody, whether they're beginners, have done no deals, up to we've got guys in there that have $50 or $60 million in assets that they operate.
Wow.
But
yeah,
partner with a lot of them too. There's just so many deals that happen inside of that group that they get a lot of value out of it, or lead flow. Because there's guys in the group that they get scared. They find a deal, they don't know what to do with it, and they'll wholesale it to somebody else in the group or pass it on to somebody else in the group. And so those guys are able to kind of gobble up deals that nobody else wants, but fits their model. And with this net level group, we're really trying to keep it with people that are 6-figure a year earners and above, that want to grow it. If they're just comfortable where they're at, I think it would be a waste of their money to be involved in the group outside of maybe just operations. I really am looking for those guys that want to just grow their business from where they're
love it.
And I get a lot of value out of partnering with guys on deals. So if they're not growing and they're taking up a spot in this group because it's going to be very limited, then it's not profitable for me
or them.
Yeah,
waste time. And I'll tell you this, Caleb, man, this is just reality. Like if you don't realize that if you're not growing, you're dying. There's no staying hovering. There's no such thing as hovering, especially right now. Like you're either deciding, making a mental commitment, like I'm going to go be a savage. I'm going to go dominate. I'm going to go. And so much of that dominating is going and being a part of the tribe that you want to be a part of, and riding along with them. They make you better, you make them better. But if you've watched this interview this long, you're looking for permission to be in that group. You're looking for it, or you already know it's for you. So so they definitely got to be growth oriented. I love that, Caleb. And then I think you have a founder's investment right now as far as access to the group. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we're doing a first round at $1,000 a month for a founders group, or founders price. And we'll probably adjust that later on because we really want to keep this group small. So we'll probably raise that price later. I'll leave people locked in at the price they come in at, but I really do want to make sure that we're working with top tier people. I want them to
value your time and value and understand the power of investing in themselves. What was the guy's name, Mike, who you helped rework the deal to go into it?
Micah. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, Micah. Yeah. It's like, well, would you, looking back now, you just increased the value of the property by $700,000. Would you have invested less than, $1,000 or $1,000 a month in order to have access to that wisdom to produce that end result? And the answer to that's a no-brainer, right? Because you're trading.
He was the second person to sign up for the event. or if
Oh,
we've
was he? Isn't that great? Yeah,
it's
because
already.
it's an absolute no-brainer. And I always like to tell people when I hear like that's why I'm so passionate about talking to experts about their coaching clubs and their masterminds and their mentoring when it's legitimate, like you are, is the investment's free.
Yep.
You just got to pay for it first. Like you
Yep.
just got to make the mental commitment to be in it. And what I would say is that if your goals aren't big enough, or if you can't see how this is a free investment, that's more a reflection of your lack of ability to think bigger and borrow Caleb's belief than it is the investment required to be in the group, period. You know, so one of the coolest things about going to live masterminds, I think you'd agree with me too, is like you talk about the quiet guy in the back of the room who asked you a simple question. Is you probably also realize he wasn't really that much smarter than anyone in the room.
Yeah.
He didn't have a higher IQ than you. He just was doing something. His strategy was different. And so he was getting a completely different world, end result. So I think it's awesome. How do you want guys reaching out to you, Caleb?
Ideally, if they follow me on Facebook, if they don't, they should. And then if they follow me on Facebook, message me on there. Kind of makes it easier for me to keep track of who I'm talking to and put faces to people.
There's that good looking guy. I'll tell you. I'll tell you, man, you do a phenomenal job of your posts are awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're awesome. The $5,600 Western car golf cart, zero question. You got to buy that. That's awesome. That's fantastic.
I've got some mean messages from the wife, but I think she'll be on board.
Hey, if you're not trying, you ain't playing. So hey, I love it. I love it. So hey, if you guys are interested in getting inside Capitalist Cartel Platinum, or you just even are like, I think I'm in, Caleb, I may have a question or two, like, am I a good fit? I'm just trying to think through it. Don't want to waste your time. That's totally fair. Just message him and say, hey, I'm interested in platinum, or maybe I'm not ready for it yet. I'd like to know what other options are there. Those are all fair game, and I think it's you're doing great things for people, man. I think you're so unassuming, and when you start explaining what you do, it's still taken me a few rounds to totally grasp my head, because I think you're just killing it, and there's so much to offer so many people. So
thank you. And one thing I always tell people too, if they have any interest in the group, even if before they reach out to me, if they just see all the other members of the group, I mean, you can see who's members of it. You can reach out to any of them and get their input on it. It's like, I don't think there's any better source to answer your questions even than some of those other members that are seeing it day to day, and anybody's questions, but I really think the word of mouth is probably the best thing we have going for that Capitalist Cartel group. I think everybody is a big fan of it, to say the least.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Cool. All right, everybody. Well, hey, Caleb, it was great having you on the show today. Yeah, it's been awesome. I can't wait to see your group grow and the amount of people that you impact, and I can't wait to possibly have you back on the show again in like 6 months or a year, and get even more cool and exciting updates. I mean, there's more opportunity right now. I'll tell you, if you're with the right people doing really, and you're hustling, there's opportunity everywhere right now. So
Really,
I know you're busy with it. So so that's it. So hey, everybody, just go friend Caleb, message him if you think you're in, if you want to be part of it. We'd love to hear all about it. If you like the show, please share it with people in your network. And it was great having you. So, all right. Awesome having you, Caleb. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you soon. Appreciate you.
Yep, thanks.